Hi, welcome back to Alrighty English. This is Augustine. In this lesson, we're going to look at the difference between though, although, and even though, and despite and in spite of. Let's start by looking at though, although, and even though. So these three words are conjunctions, right? Connecting words. And some examples of conjunctions are the words and, because, but, and however. We use these words with adverb clauses. A clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. For example, I sleep. I is the subject and sleep is the verb. And we use them to show contrast, right? Which means we're going to show a difference. We're going to have a positive and negative relationship. So what does it all mean? It means that you're going to have a pretty long sentence, and this sentence will have two clauses. One clause will have one of these conjunctions, and the other clause will be an independent clause or a sentence that can stand alone. And using these conjunctions will show a difference between one clause to the other clause, right? We're going to establish that positive and negative relationship. Despite and in spite of are prepositions. A preposition is a word like in, on, or at, and we use them with a phrase. A phrase is a group of words that doesn't have a subject and a verb. So, for example, red car, run fast, right? Red car, we have adjective and a noun. That's a phrase. And then we have run fast. We have the verb run and the adverb fast. That's another phrase. And we use them to show contrast. Before we go to some sample sentences, I want to take a look at each word a bit more in detail. So, though and although basically mean the same thing. The difference is that uh, you can move you can move though to the end of the clause, and when you do this, you're going to be using it in an informal way. And we usually do this when we're speaking, not so much when we're writing. So, for example, I'm not hungry though. Even though it's very similar to though and although, the difference is that it's a bit more emphatic. We use it to emphasize the contrast, to emphasize the difference. It's a stronger way to say though and although, but most of the time they have the same meaning. Despite and in spite of, they're the same, same meaning. Uh, I guess the difference comes down to despite being one word and in spite of being three words. Okay, now let's go over some examples. And we'll start with though, although, and even though. Though it may rain, I'm going. Um, you know, usually, let me give you a scenario here. Maybe you want to go to the beach, but it might rain, right? It may rain. Most people would probably not go, right? Who likes to go to the beach when it's raining? I don't. I like to go to the beach when it's nice and sunny. So here we're showing a contrast, right? Our expectation is not to go, but we're going. What I want you guys to notice as well is that we have our subject and our verb on the left side of the comma, and then we have our subject and our verb on the right side of the comma, right? So we have two clauses making a juicy sentence. When you start a sentence with though, although, and even though, make sure to put a comma after the clause. However, you can always flip the clauses, and when you do that, you don't have to put the comma, right? So you can say, I'm going, though it may rain. We can also say, although it may rain, I'm going. I'm going although it may rain. Even though it may rain, I'm going. I'm going even though it may rain. Right? These six sentences have the same basic meaning and they're all good. And you might be wondering, if they mean the same thing, then why do we use different words? Well, variety. That's what makes English so beautiful. The fact that we're able to say the same thing in different ways. And this is actually an advantage for you as an English learner, especially if you're taking the IELTS or the TOEFL exam. By using all of these words, you're showing your range. And raters love that. They love to see students being able to use though, although, and even though correctly. I also want to teach you, I want to show you how to use though at the end of a sentence with this same idea, right? It may rain, period. I'm going though, right? Same meaning as the six sentences above. It's just a bit more informal, and you're going to hear this often in spoken English. Let's look at more examples. Though John liked her, he didn't kiss her, right? Usually, if you like someone and you go out and they like you, you'll kiss that person. But here, the opposite's happening. No kissing. John liked her. He didn't kiss her though. Right? Same meaning. Although Mary was late, she didn't get in trouble. Right? Usually when you are late, you get in trouble. But here, Mary didn't. Even though I had enough money, I didn't buy the car. Right? Usually when you want to buy a car and you have enough money, you'll buy it. But this person didn't. Oops. Uh, let's take a look at some mistakes with though, although, and even though. So let's look at this good sentence. John liked her. He didn't kiss her though. Sometimes students will try to say this, but instead of saying though at the end, they're going to put although or even though. And you can't do that. You can't say John liked her. He didn't kiss her although. John liked her. He didn't kiss her even though. You cannot end a clause that way. So please avoid that. I do think, and I highly encourage you to use though at the end of a sentence when you're speaking so you can sound more like a native speaker. Just make sure you're doing it correctly. And we have, even though I had enough money, I didn't buy the car. And here's the mistake. Even I had enough money, I didn't buy the car. And this happens a lot. So please, if you're trying to use even though, make sure you add the though. If you don't, it will be incorrect. Teachers really don't like this. This is known as a comma splice. So please, if you're trying to use even though, make sure you add the though. Don't leave it out. If not, it will be incorrect. Raters really don't like this. Now let's move on to some examples for despite and in spite of. Despite the long lines, Henry enjoyed the rides at Disneyland. What I want you guys to notice is that after despite, we have a noun phrase, right? I mentioned that despite and in spite of are used with phrases. Keep this in mind. You can always flip them if you want. Henry enjoyed the rides at Disneyland despite the long lines. In spite of the long lines, Henry enjoyed the rides at Disneyland. Or Henry enjoyed the rides at Disneyland in spite of the long lines. Oopsie, I noticed I made a mistake. It should be in spite of the long lines. Sorry about that. uh, let's go on to more examples. Despite eating a lot of sweets, he is skinny. Here we're using a gerund phrase, right? We're using an ing verb as a noun. And you can totally do this. You can always flip them if you want. He is skinny despite eating a lot of sweets. And here, I hope you guys can see the contrast. Usually when you eat a lot of sweet things like cake and candy, you're not going to be skinny. But this person is. He's so lucky, right? In spite of not being hungry, he ate. Right? Usually, when you're not hungry, you don't eat. But this person did. You can always flip them. He ate in spite of not being hungry. Alrighty, now let's look at some mistakes regarding despite and in spite of. So we have a good sentence. Despite the long lines, Henry enjoyed the ride at Disneyland. The incorrect sentence. Despite of the long lines, Henry enjoyed the rides at Disneyland. And it is a very common mistake. Students like to add of after despite, and you cannot do that. We usually do not put two prepositions after each other. Despite is a preposition and of is a preposition. So please do not do this. We have in spite of not being hungry, he ate. This is the mistake some students make. They'll write in spite as one word, and you can't do that because there are two words. So when you're using in spite of, make sure you're writing it out completely as three words. Alrighty, let's move on to the mistake of the day. Oh, look, it's Homer. And let's look at the sentence. I went to the store. I saw my friend. Hmm. Can you find a mistake? Well, let me know in the comment section. Um, I'll be waiting for your answers. Alrighty, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care. Until next time. Bye bye.